Resuming debates, the honourable member for Parkdale-High Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very pleased to be able to stand and speak to this Bill C-51 today. I've been getting many email messages from constituents in my riding. I've been collecting them. They are unanimously critical and opposed to this bill, and I think as more Canadians find out what is actually in it and they understand the implications of it, that opposition will increase. I want to be very clear in, first of all, criticizing the process with which the Conservatives are rushing this bill through the House. It is, of course, another omnibus bill that changes many existing pieces of legislation, and after 2 hours of debate in this House, they brought in a closure motion, which will mean after a grand total of 10 hours of debate, they want this bill hustled off to a committee, which hopefully they will not rush through in order to have, I hope, a very full study. But that's not been their practice so far, Mr. Speaker. I want to be clear that what they could have done here is they could have continued the very collegial atmosphere last October when we were all shocked by a shooting right here on Parliament Hill. 2 young men lost their lives. It was frightening, it was shocking, and we all agreed at that time that we would work together and that we should not sacrifice our democracy and our principles in a rush, in a stampede to act out of fear and insecurity. And now, Mr. Speaker, I feel that the government is in fact rushing to bring this bill in and get it passed out of political expediency because they think it's going to help them get re-elected, and they also don't want to give Canadians time to actually find out what's in this bill because they know that once they do, they'll be more opposed to it. But let me say very clearly, Mr. Speaker, that what we stand for in the New Democratic Party, and I believe what our leader has articulated very clearly, is that we believe that we should have legislation that provides security, that will keep Canadians safe, but that also protects our civil liberties. Security and civil liberties, public safety, are all Canadian values, and they're not a trade-off. They're not a balancing act. We need to have both security and our civil liberties. So we need to protect our freedom as much as we protect our security. And what we could have done with this bill, and there's still time for the government and the third party to agree to this, is to have a more serious evidence-based approach to anti-terrorism legislation. We could stop playing politics with this, and we could hear from experts in Canada and around the world. We could look at what other countries are doing. We could, in fact, choose the best. And after a thorough review, engaging all parties, all of our ideas, coming to the table, and after a full debate, we could come to what I believe would be an effective bill for public safety, one that includes strong oversight of our security and intelligence agencies, one that devotes appropriate resources to security and intelligence agencies rather than making cuts to these agencies, which this government has done, and one that, rather than fanning the flames of Islamophobia, would work with at-risk communities on counter-radicalization programs. That's what's needed in this country, and that's where this government has failed. Mr. Speaker, the criticisms of this bill are, of course, many, but let me try to highlight just a few of them. There's been a lot of concern about how sweeping this law is, how vague, and probably how ineffective it is. And in the short time allotted to me today, I don't have time to get into a detailed analysis of this. But let me just say that after repeated tough questioning in the House of Commons, neither the Prime Minister nor the Minister of Public Safety nor the Minister of Defence, after tough questioning from the Leader of the Opposition, none of them could offer a single example of a crime that could have been stopped, of a danger that could have been thwarted by this legislation that isn't already covered by existing legislation. They couldn't offer even one example to this House, which is pretty shocking, Mr. Speaker. Surely, if you're going to fix the problem, you better understand what the problem is, and you better know that what you're proposing is going to fix the problem. They couldn't give one single example. That's pretty shocking. And there is serious concern that because of the vagueness and because of the overreach of this legislation, that those who are in fact engaged in legitimate, lawful dissent, or in some cases, maybe they're people who are pushing the limits a bit, that those people may also be scooped up under this bill. And I think, particularly coming from the City of Toronto, I think of the people who were detained, who were kettled, as it were, in downtown Toronto during the G8 and G20 talks in Toronto and the G20 talks, that those people who, from which not one charge was laid, these people who were detained, who were held in very difficult conditions, whose rights were not respected, to me, that's a very slippery slope, and this bill continues down that slippery slope. When constitutional lawyers across this country, former prime ministers, former premiers, are all sounding the alarm bells about the constitutionality of this bill, about the dangers of this bill, then maybe we should pay attention. And again, it's not necessary that we violate our civil liberties in order to provide public safety. You know, I live in a neighborhood in this country where people are worried sick about highly flammable toxic substances going through our riding in tank cars, the same kind of tank cars that exploded and incinerated people in Lac Mégantic. I'd like this government to invest more in public safety, for rail safety, invest in food safety. I want to see all of our public safety invested in, and not just a knee-jerk response as we're seeing through this bill. Mr. Speaker, lack of oversight is also a serious concern that's being raised about Bill C-51. As the former Vice Chair of the Finance Committee, I was on the Finance Committee in 2012 when an omnibus bill, thank you, Mr. Speaker, was brought before that committee. And we had as a witness Paul Kennedy, who was one of the people involved in setting up our spy agency, CSIS. And he, at that time, was raising the alarm bells, sounding the alarm bells about getting rid of oversight of CSIS, which was included in a budget bill, if you can believe it. And I want to just quote him because I think his comments are very important. For anyone to sit here and possibly think that because CSIS doesn't like something, CSIS should be accommodated and it should be removed, that is the oversight, is sheer insanity. It really is. CSIS doesn't get to make that call. The minister's job is to give the public assurances and to make sure the tools are there to give it. If you came up with a better model, fine, but he was critical that the model that existed, which was the oversight of CSIS, was being removed. And when this model was set up, you separated the spy agency from policing. You had CSIS and the RCMP. What this bill does is blur those two, and yet having taken away the oversight, not replaced it, and in fact cut resources to CSIS, cut resources to the RCMP, and somehow this government wants the public to believe that they're treating security and public safety seriously. I don't buy it, Mr. Speaker, and increasingly Canadians don't buy it. Thank goodness there is one principled leader in this country, the leader of the official opposition, who is standing up and challenging this government and poking holes in the error of this legislation. I believe all Canadians will be thankful for it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.